Good day, and thanks for stopping by GardenStateWeather.com, New Jersey and the Northern Mid-Atlantic region's weather news portal. I'm forecaster Robert Smith, and this is the Thursday edition, October 19, 2011, of the Daily Video Forecast Discussion. Start things out on a busy morning this morning. Warm front already producing rainfall across the New Jersey, New York City metropolitan area this morning. Some of the rain moving to the north and northwest very steadily now this morning. Storm Prediction Center has us in about a 5% chance of wind risk this afternoon, all the way from southern New York into and around the Carolinas. And also here we have a risk of 30% of wind damage. It's very high across the inner Carolina mountains and the Virginia mountains here. So outside of this warm front, which is already producing light to moderate rain, probably around a quarter of an inch or less as this is streaming north, there's a lot more moisture offshore and, of course, down through the Carolinas and off the Georgia coast. This is where the moderate to heavy rain is occurring now as low pressure develops in this area. Question is, during today, after we get through this band of rain across the New Jersey, New York City area this morning, does this area of rain come close to the coast from Delaware through coastal New Jersey and into New York City and then eventually Long Island and Connecticut with the heaviest rain of an inch or two? Or does some of this, according to some of the models, remain along the coast and further out to sea? Most of the model consensus is showing that the coastal front will be right along the coast, so just to the north and west of that, from Delaware all the way through coastal New Jersey into northeast New Jersey, New York City proper, Long Island, and Connecticut, getting in on an inch or better of rainfall during today. Meanwhile, we have the upper low still over the upper Midwest here, the Ohio and Tennessee Valley. The rainfall in this area is moderate, but it's not as heavy as what's developing here off the Carolina coast, and the combination between these two today is going to produce more rain, moderate to heavy, around the area from Delaware all the way up through the New York City metropolitan area, interior southeastern New York, Connecticut, and Long Island during this afternoon. Watches, warnings, and advisories this morning. Coastal flood statements here for coastal New Jersey all the way down through the Delaware Bays. And this is as indicative of the fact that high tide cycles this morning and this afternoon in various regions here along the coast all the way down to the Delmarva and also across New York and interior Connecticut too. And these advisories are in effect from anywhere from 3 o'clock this afternoon with the high tide cycle in New Jersey, a little bit later up into New York and Connecticut this afternoon and this evening. And that's because the waters are running about 1 to 2 feet above normal mean, and the strong east to southeast winds developing here could cause some of the water to spill over here. Right along the immediate coast, small craft advisories, you take your pick anywhere from the northeast all the way down through the mid-Atlantic states. Coastal small craft advisories in effect. East to southeast winds becoming south at certain locations here during the afternoon. East to southeast across the New Jersey, New York waters during this afternoon. And seas building anywhere from 3 to 5 feet up to as much as 7 feet with very strong winds. Could be watching some of these winds mix down 30 to 35 knots, maybe even choppy, or up to 40, and that may mean that we may need to see a gale warning placed into effect this afternoon. But for right now, small craft advisories for this area during the afternoon and tonight. And as far as temperatures go, they're generally running in the 50s to lower 60s, and that's just about where they're going to stay with the rain on the way during today. And the greatest threat for heavy rain today coming from the rock model. This is the 850 or 5,000 foot millibar flow, moisture influx flow, which shows us just about where the wind flow and the heaviest precipitable water values will probably be located in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. You can find the deeper reds here just offshore, but still approaching criteria here right along the immediate coast. And as that propagates up further this afternoon, this is a current reading this morning as of the broadcast, we'll find that the stronger moisture transport will be right up along the Delaware Bay area, southern New Jersey, right along the eastern shorelines of New Jersey, and into the New York City, Philadelphia, New York City area rather proper, and into Long Island. This is where we expect 1 to 2 inches of rainfall with heavy periods of rain during this afternoon. And especially into New York City and Long Island, they could get 1, 2, 3 inches of rainfall as you get further out here during this afternoon and tonight too, with a lot of heavier moisture right offshore heading right into the Long Island Sound. Points further west may have less, but still anywhere from 3/4 of an inch in the Philadelphia area up to and including 1, maybe 1.5 inches of rain in the New York City metropolitan area during this afternoon. Some convection may form along offshore today, and there could be some convective elements too, in other words, thunderstorms, and that would be confined mostly to the coastal regions, but we'll take a look at those diagrams in just a moment. Surface frontogenetic forcing, the big circled reds right here along and offshore the Carolina coast. This is at the surface, so this is where the air is piling up here, and that is going to become our coastal front. And if we go back and check the mid-level frontogenetic forcing, we find a lot of that now going on just offshore southern New Jersey and Long Island. This is going to transport in some very, very heavy rain moving up into this area and offshore into New York City and Long Island proper during the afternoon. Upper level low on the view here, situated over southern Illinois. Why is the rain going to be so heavy? Here's our precipitable water values here. Anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches across the New Jersey, New York City metropolitan Philadelphia area, all the way down to the Delmarva. The heaviest deep moisture plume of 2 to 2.5 inches off the coast of Florida, all the way to just offshore the Delmarva this morning in the Chesapeake. And we'll start the GFS model, NAM model off this morning. We can see the rainfall. Let's having a hard time with this. Okay. We can see the rainfall now developing across the area of the Carolinas and the Virginias. Here comes one swath this morning, another swath through here in the New Jersey, New York City metropolitan area, then up through coastal Connecticut and southern New England. Here's our upper low backing now into the Great Lakes and western New York and into Canada by tomorrow. High pressure building in across the Midwest and the South, and that should generally spread across the region over the weekend. But it's going to be very breezy during today with the east to southeast flow and then southerly flow, and then as we get through the day, today and tonight, the winds are going to start backing around to the south and southwest, and then eventually the west, and this is going to cause the air also to become very breezy between the pressure gradient between high pressure here and the storm system departing over Atlantic Canada. Forecast for this afternoon, here's the frontal boundary across the Delmarva, and low pressure developing off the Carolina coast. Lots of rain here inland with this upper low across the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. And a moderate batch of strong east to southeast winds and rain just about everywhere here. First batch moving into southern New England this afternoon. Second batch back down here and offshore along the Carolinas. As we get into tonight, the low begins to occlude further inland across Pennsylvania. Frontal boundary just over us. Moderate to heavy rain falling from New York City up through the New York valleys and into southern New England. Frontal system stretching now off the southern New Jersey coast and into after midnight tonight, where some drying could be indicated here across the Delmarva region. And then as we get into the day tomorrow, obviously tomorrow morning, the upper low now getting into western New York State. Frontal system passes completely off the New Jersey terminals by tomorrow morning at around 7 o'clock. And still we find this big deep trough here across the upper Great Lakes. And that will be slowly lifting and consolidating these two pressure fields here into one as we get through the nighttime hours on Thursday night. I see one low here across southern Canada and the other one too over the Great Lakes. And generally this will be weakening. This trough will gradually be weakening throughout the period, but it's going to be a very windy next 48 hours. Notice this morning that some of the models really just don't have a handle this morning on just the aerial extent of the pre-warm frontal rains that have broken out across the area this morning. But the models do play catch up, and sticking up for the NAM this morning, it shows that plume of moisture offshore now getting into Long Island. This is where it thinks the heaviest rain is going to be, just offshore New York City and coastal New Jersey and Long Island by this afternoon, and then getting into southern New England and up near the Cape this evening with very high rainfall rates of about maybe 1 to 2 inches, maybe even 3 inches. I should note here and stop here for a second that the flood gauges will not, we're not going to have to worry about too much flooding from rivers and streams. However, it's only going to take 1 or 2 inches of rain in about a 3-hour period to get some of the flashier streams in northwestern and northeastern New Jersey to flood. And if the axis of rain is actually a little further west this afternoon and evening than the models are showing, then that could mean that rapid rises in rivers and streams might make it possible for some of the smaller streams and creeks to flood. And of course, there are no flood advisories out now, but that may change this afternoon as the situation will have to be monitored. But right now, it looks like the models and the latest data point to most of the coastal areas, and then offshore. The biggest concerns here would be Long Island and southern Connecticut and Massachusetts. Those areas are going to be in for some flooding concerns. Other than that, rain will produce moderate urban and street flooding across the region this afternoon. As we get into tomorrow morning, let's go back here until this afternoon and tonight. The rain gets spottier, perhaps even stops altogether across the Delmarva, central and southern New Jersey and northern New Jersey tomorrow. Maybe some leftover clouds and maybe some drizzle. And then the winds shift around and we get into a south wind. It's going to be choppy up along the coast. Obviously, gale warnings may be needed in certain locations, especially offshore tomorrow. Maybe just small craft advisories continuing for the rest of the area. And then the winds gradually diminish. The upper low begins to fill. We can see some of the precipitation still drying out across the western mountains of Pennsylvania and through New York. And as we get through the next 60, 70 hours, a west flow taking over, drier air coming in, virtually no precipitation at all as high pressure begins to get into the area. So if we looked at the 84-hour total from the NAM, it shows just about an inch, maybe an inch and a half of rain, especially northeastern New Jersey, the coastal areas, and then of course into Long Island and southeastern New York, Connecticut, and of course Massachusetts, southern New England proper. So running over on time here for GardenStateWeather.com, I'm forecaster Robert Smith. Be safe out there today, and we'll check in with you again on Friday morning.